Podcorn. This podcast is brought to you by MC2424A, IPRMSA, UITM, Malacca Chapter.
Hello and hi. This is your host, Ain Najwa, and welcome to today's episode of Podcorn, a podcast all about various topics. To keep up to date with what's coming up, be sure to follow us on all our social media platforms at IPRMSA Malacca. I hope you enjoyed the episode and let's get straight into it. So let's get started. I would like you guys to think about every time someone has said or taught you something sexist. Now think about what you have heard about feminism in the media, from your friends, from yourself. Now the more we women talk about feminism, the more we learn that the word is synonymous with man-hating, as they are portraying being feminist means wanting all these women to have greater rights than men, when the actual objective behind being feminist is to fight for equal rights between men and women. Let us talk about the actual meaning of the word feminism. For the record, feminism means the belief that men and women should have equal rights and opportunities. It is the theory of the political and social equality of the sexes. Now think about what gender inequality and feminism looked like in the past. Did you know that there are still countries where patriarchal culture and beliefs are frowned upon, and that stereotypical masculinity and femininity beliefs are still there in Malaysia, our own country? In this podcast, we will move on with trying to break stereotypical masculinity and femininity beliefs in our culture. Let me get into the first point of this whole podcast today, which is about breaking beliefs about the general pattern of men and women that is portrayed by our society. First of all, the definition of gender roles is society's expectations of how we should behave, speak, dress, groom, and conduct ourselves. For instance, women are frequently expected to behave politely, be accommodating, and be nurturing, while men are typically supposed to be powerful, combative, and brave. Gender role expectations exist in every country, ethnic group, and culture, but they can vary greatly among them. Over time, they may also alter within the same civilization. For instance, in the United States, pink used to be associated with men, but blue was associated with women. Inhibiting someone from pursuing their aspirations because of the phrase girls should be girls and boys should be boys are harmful gender norms. Children develop into agents who actively promote and apply gender norms to people around them, just like adults. Children who do not fit the acceptable gender role may have unpleasant consequences, including being teased or excluded by their peers. Despite the fact that many of these penalties are informal, they can be very harsh. For instance, a girl who chooses to attend karate class rather than dance lessons would be referred to be a tomboy, and she might have trouble fitting in with both male and female peer groups. Boys, in particular, experience severe mockery for not conforming to gender norms. The first socialization factor is family. There is a lot of evidence to suggest that sons and daughters are socialized differently by parents. In general, girls are given more freedom to stray from their predetermined gender role. There may be underlying signs of inequality, even when parents make gender equality as a priority. For instance, while girls might be asked to fold clothes or carry out other jobs that call for neatness and care, boys might be asked to take up the trash or carry out the other tasks that call for strength or toughness. It has been discovered that dads hold their children to higher standards of gender conformity than mothers do, and that their demands are higher for males than daughters. However, sons often enjoy more privileges as a result of differential socialization. Sons, for example, are given more freedom and independence at a younger age than females. They might be subject to fewer limitations about acceptable attire, dating customs, or curfew. Sons are frequently exempt from family chores that are traditionally performed by women, such as cooking and cleaning. Daughters are constrained by the idea that they will be submissive and caring, generally obedient, and responsible for the household. This holds true for a wide variety of activities, including toy preferences, play methods, self-discipline, duties, and accomplishments. Boys are therefore more likely to be aware of their father's displeasure when performing a potentially feminine activity such as singing or dancing. The issue of gender roles as a whole has numerous detrimental effects on society as well as the individual dealing with it. These are two negative effects of gender roles in which girls scored higher on vocabulary to describe their emotions, whereas boys depicted themselves as angry with low levels of empathy. Also, girls underestimate their intelligence and have lower self-esteem, whereas boys tend to overestimate their achievements and ability. The things I just said demonstrate how gender roles actually originate in the family. Families have a big responsibility to break the pattern of gender roles in their children's lives because it may be seriously harmful to them in the future. Moving on to the second point of this podcast today, let us talk about gender discrimination. When someone is treated unfairly or disadvantageously based on their gender, although not always in a sexual manner, this is known as gender discrimination. This includes sex-based, gender identity, or gender expression-based harassment or discrimination. Preconceived, erroneous societal and individual beliefs about what gender is, how gender should seem, or how gender is performed are frequently the source of gender discrimination. I went into great length of how people view how gender discrimination operates in terms of the overall ideals of what a man and woman should be. This time, I'll go into greater detail about how gender discrimination affects women in our culture or how it could limit women's rights in our nation. Most of the time, men can be and do everything they want according to their preferences, while women are constantly constrained in what they can accomplish, which finally results in society restricting women's rights. This is the general understanding of gender discrimination, right? This is what we understand. Women's rights movements have been working hard for a long time to remedy this imbalance, advocating for legislation changes or marching in the streets to demand that their rights to be upheld. As everybody knows, women's rights are also among the human rights. Thus, I suppose that as a woman, we must draw attention to this topic in this podcast episode, as we need this act to be stopped right now so that women can live in peace and on an equal footing with men. Talking about gender discrimination or stereotypes relates very closely to restricting women's rights. Human rights belong to each of us. These rights include the freedom from abuse and discrimination, the best possible level of bodily and mental health, and education, the opportunity to own property and exercise one's right to vote, and the ability to be paid equally. However, many women and girls still experience sexism and gender discrimination on a global scale. Many issues that disproportionately affect women, like domestic and sexual violence, lower wages, limited access to education, and insufficient healthcare, are rooted in gender inequality. The most prevalent instance of gender discrimination is the differential treatment that many women experience at work. According to a survey conducted by the Women's Aid Organisation, the majority of Malaysian women respondents have encountered sexual harassment in the workplace. According to the findings, 62% of the 1,010 women polled stated that they had experienced sexual harassment at work. 56% of women reported experiencing employment discrimination according to the survey. Usually when something terrible happens to women, especially incidents awful enough to make the newspapers, the debate about women's lack of safety is often accompanied by individual men acting defensively. That is not very helpful. All women know. It is not all men. The problem is that they don't know which men until it's too late. Not nearly enough men fully understand that. Men need to practice empathy and be proactive in making women feel safe. They should actively help make society less of a threat for women and girls. Not being a perpetrator is enough. Gender discrimination in the workplace also includes being overlooked for promotions, receiving remarks or inquiries about their marital status or family plans, and women required to perform duties that are not assigned to male co-workers, such as brewing coffee and serving refreshments. The mental and physical health of all the ladies could be seriously harmed by this. They would be quite apprehensive about going to their own workplace, which would lead to women not being able to secure any jobs at the end of the day and prevent them from earning their own money. According to my personal perspective, gender roles are a problem in every nation, whether they be Asian or European. Patriarchal cultures are frequently linked to traditional gender norms. When we discuss patriarchy, it means that social organization is marked by the supremacy of the father in the clan or family, the legal dependence of wives and children, and the reckoning of descent and inheritance in the male line. In another word, I could say that patriarchy happens when the society is dominated by men. Everything that is happening in the society that supports men being superior is called patriarchy culture. And when women face direct or indirect discrimination in a variety of settings, such as the workplace or at home with their families, this is known as patriarchy. For instance, in a marriage in Malaysia, the majority of women are expected to handle all the domestic duties, including cooking, cleaning, and taking care of the kids, because it is believed that women have softer feelings. The traditional gender roles are another illustration of patriarchal culture and civilizations because they promote the ideology of motherhood, which limits women's mobility and places heavy demands on them to care for and raise children. The biological propensity to have children is related to the social obligations of motherhood, which include providing for, educating, and raising children while devoting oneself to the family. However, if we adhere to the genuine teachings of Islam, marrying a woman is not equivalent to hiring a servant. Rather, it is choosing a companion and partner with whom one can spend the rest of one's life. Men must consider her and her wants and not control her all the time. The truth is that a woman has some rights over her husband and that a guy is not the proprietor of his wife. The marriage will eventually suffer from this kind of notion that only women should be responsible for taking care of the home and raising children, as the discrepancies in roles in marriage also lead to greater conflict, reliance, and resentment, which are all acknowledged by couples with an unequal partnership. Starting with those around us, we can fight patriarchy, including both males and females. Patriarchy predates both our religion and the written religious books. The rules of our lives are set by patriarchy, just as we all have religious texts in our homes and identify as members of a particular faith. Therefore, the first step in ending patriarchy is to introduce equality and feminism to your inmates and get them comfortable with it. Furthermore, you may destroy this patriarchal culture by promoting feminism in your home. Normalize the idea that everyone should be familiar with the fundamentals of cooking and housekeeping in order to promote feminism at home. Nobody should rely on others to complete their work for them based on gender. Get rid of the notion that women shouldn't discuss money issues because they don't comprehend it. Financial savvy is not innately absent in women. They have never had financial management training. Encourage your family to have conversations about financial independence, difficulties, and possible solutions. The allotted time is almost up, and although there is still a lot I would like to say regarding the subject of today, I suppose it is time to wrap things up. As a result, we have covered a lot of ground in this episode of the podcast about gender inequality in our nation, including the fact that most women worldwide constantly endure sexual harassment and discrimination, in addition to being the targets of patriarchal culture that persists in the modern era. Everyone has a responsibility, as I have stated, to change the culture that we are all still a part of. I passionately feel that as a global society, we need to tackle the problem of sexual harassment and gender-based violence with much more urgency than we have exhibited thus far. It is so widespread that it is safe to say that virtually every woman experiences it in some form during their lifetime, wherever they live, until more men understand just how deeply ingrained the fear of violence and harassment is in every woman's consciousness and behaviors. It will continue to feel almost like a normal part of womanhood. It shouldn't be that way. We need change fast. Lastly, thank you to all the listeners for tuning in. Don't forget to listen to other episodes of Podcorn on our official social media platform at IPRMSA Melaka. Goodbye!